Hello everyone, I am Gülçin Sinav, Program Director at Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom in Turkey.
And I'm Andreas Marazis, Researcher and Project Manager at the European Neighborhood Council. And we are the European Neighborhood Council In-Depth podcast. Today's in-depth discussion is the first of a series of podcasts which are part of the Beyond Erasmus education, exchanges, and employment opportunities for youth in the EU and Turkey. The project is supported by Friedrich Naumann Foundation in Turkey and aims at promoting student mobility beyond the Erasmus Plus framework, youth exchanges, internships, training courses, networking, access to funding for small and medium enterprises, and free market entrepreneurship and civil society organizations, among other things.
And in today's podcast, we will focus on access to funding opportunities for youth from Turkey and Europe who are still enrolled in bachelor's or master's program. And we have the pleasure to virtually have with us two good friends and talented experts who will help us in today's discussion and provide some useful tips. We have Emre. He is a key expert at European Union Think Sivil Düşün program and CIFE representative in Turkey. Hello, Emre. And we have Medeni Sungur. He is the founder of Kuest Media. Hello, Medeni.
Thank you.
Now, Emre, Medeni, welcome to the ENC Dev podcast. It's great to have you on board one more time. It wasn't too long since the last time that we had our previous podcast discussion. So I'm very pleased to see you once again with us here. So I would like to start our discussion by asking you first, Emre. I understand you have experience in EU-funded projects. Can you please guide us through existing programs, starting with the basics? For example, main financial mechanisms, institutions for Turkey and the EU that youth from EU and Turkey can benefit from. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Pleasure again being together. Well, when we are going into this access to funding issue, it's like a very big mechanism, sometimes a little bit hard to comprehend. I would just basically try to reframe in easy terms, because when we are looking at this funding issue, we always talk about different terminologies. But let me just simply say that there are two types of funding that is coming mainly from EU. And one of them is actually the central budget of EU that we usually have in mind as pre-accession assistance that is channeled towards Turkey as a candidate country. And another aspect would be the community programs that Turkey is part of. And one of the most popular one that is probably known by our youth is actually Erasmus Plus. But of course, the community programs are going beyond that. So when we are taking this example of Erasmus Plus, maybe we can also already go into a little bit deeper about the community programs once we take the opportunity. As each budget for EU is planned for 7 years, Turkey is now in the phase of planning in which community programs Turkey is going to be part of. That's kind of a governmental decision. It is already sure that Erasmus Plus program is going to be one of them, along with some traditional programs that are going on as previous Horizon 2020, which will be Horizon Europe in the next term, and COSME program, and also some others like European Solidarity Corps that are important to mention. Of course, some SME related programs and customs related programs are part of it, but I'm just not going to mention a lot about them since our focus today is a little bit more on youth. That's why I will just want to talk about more these community programs in this youth focus. But if you think it is useful, maybe we can go through that with your questions. Looking at these Erasmus Plus program, I think this is one of the most relevant one that promotes youth exchanges, also experience sharing, also mobility. And you don't necessarily need to have a status of an NGO in order to benefit from that. You can create an informal group and apply for them. And application processes for Erasmus Plus is one of the easiest one. That's why I think that's a very good starting point for access to funding for both youth and also youth organizations. And also, if like other programs around European Solidarity Corps or Horizon and so on, they have different characteristics, but like research programs are more, I think, better placed in a certain way for scholarship type of opportunities as a researcher for youth, because other programs around research are a little bit more complicated at the university and research level. And European Solidarity Corps type of programs are also important ones, since that gives youth an opportunity about participating to a volunteer position globally also, which is not directly about a funding, but which is part of actually going into this world of this ecosystem of EU funding along with the projects to be implemented. So briefly going through this actually community program perspectives to this pre-accession assistance perspective, where there's an available budget towards Turkey with an EU accession process perspective. We can say that this is channeled towards different contracting authorities. I'm trying to avoid being technical in terms of language, but still we can say that this is kind of responsible agency for management of the grant, could be changing in one case to another, since the specialty of the organization would be different. Usually European delegation in Turkey is managing the ones with regard to the funding in Turkey in civil society, but there are also fundings that are available that are channeled towards Central Finance and Contracts Unit, which is the organization responsible for accepting grant applications in Turkey, and also some other related ministries, like for instance, Ministry of Agriculture gets grants possibilities in the field of agriculture, or Ministry of Labor gets grant applications about employability of youth and so on. Therefore, there are different EU and Turkey cooperation youth opportunities that are available through EU funding that is coming up. While mentioning about this actual general grant applications, I think one tendency to really which is worth really talking about, is about a sub-granting methodology that is more and more adopted, especially for activists. And I think that is also good in the sense that youth activism is becoming kind of an important sort of activism, where we see more and more in each part of the world. For instance, now with this methodology, EU is granting big grants in order to allow these organizations to distribute to the activities, which with a lot more easy procedures. It's actually what Sivil Düşün, one of the programs that I am also part of, is doing in Turkey. So we receive applications from all over the Turkey with regard to the projects, with regard to the ideas that they have, with a smaller amount of funding possibility, but still with a very easy process that could be, and which is also very quick process, straightforward process. And this is actually not only the case of Sivil Düşün. For instance, there are programs like Etkiniz, which is working in the field of human rights monitoring, if you have an idea on that aspect. Also, if you are a young journalist, you can work on a special journalist program that EU is running. So there are also supports which are available there. This spectrum is actually quite large. I just named a few, like we have, for instance, STGM, who is launching a new program called Beraber, that is also funded by EU. We also have Untitled Foundation, who has been managing exchange programs at the same time for a very long time. So this kind of subgranting, I think we see more and more. And another aspect to this is actually more NGOs are implicated in the implementation of this kind of subgranting programs. For instance, now, currently, there is an open call for proposals for youth associations, youth organizations, launched by Go4, which could probably repeat after the release of our actually podcast series after this time. But this is also something to really look into at each specific case in terms of availability of different programs. It is kind of, looking at availabilities through different actually platforms and networks in order to see how this functions. But EU funding through these different channels are quite multiple and available in terms of youth field especially, but for all other cross-cutting activist issues that there are also right areas and so on that youth target group can be also interested in to reframe all this discussion actually.
Emre, if I may ask you something like as a follow-up to one of the things I've mentioned, apologies to my co-host Gülçin in Istanbul for taking a bit more time. You mentioned about the easing of access to sub-grants at some point, and there is actually question that came from our audience, like from our participants to our program, and they were asking whether these grants are available only as part of an organization or even if individual activists can apply for. Because you mentioned there are small grants, some of them, and that are handled either from the EU delegation or from other, donor giving organizations. So if you can maybe clarify a little bit at this part. Thank you.
Can I just add something on this?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I was just going to ask the same thing. A lot of organizations, a lot of groups actually, while they're starting up, the biggest question is to start the organization first or to launch the initiative first. So if you take this in mind, Emre, it's a big question for a lot of newly starting organizations or groups. Before they start doing good, they should start getting involved with the bureaucracy, or they should instead focus on what they want to do.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point, because when some people are launching on a civic engagement issue, they don't necessarily also know what kind of organizational structure they want, how they want to move on, how they are going to, interact with their audience or their constituency, so to say. I mean, there are different ways to approach different topics. So sometimes a cooperative formation could be very good as a social entrepreneurship action for certain type of actions and organizations. And for some actually activities, creating an association could be a good way, or you can always choose to be staying as a platform, so to say, in order to be really flexible about what you are implementing. And one thing that we see also, it's a global tendency. People are feeling a lot at ease when they are acting on an individual basis. Like this kind of structures are a lot more flexible nowadays in terms of their organization. We see wave-based, issue-based actually waves that are organized also around people. So this is why I think one of the reasons, and also that's kind of a feedback that a lot of donor organizations receive, there's a lot of effort going on in terms of supporting individual activists and also informal organizations. So sometimes platforms do not have any registered identity, but of course, from a donor perspective, it's a little bit complicated to manage this kind of situation. I mean, imagine like a body like EU, which is quite huge, and then investing in a small activist. It is, of course, a little bit more complicated. Therefore, there are intermediate structures like organizations, NGOs, or technical assistance programs who are in charge to manage this kind of situation. And depending on their nature, I think there's a very now wide variety of grants and sub-grants and in-kind supports that are available throughout the portfolio that many people can benefit from, and you don't necessarily need to have something like an organizational structure for that.
Thank you, Emre. And I have a question regarding the capacity development of these grants. Like, you would agree with me, maybe young people usually lack experience not only in identifying the right grants, but also sometimes in how to apply for these grants or how to manage the project that they get after the grants. And according to your opinion, which are the essential tools for this capacity? And also, do you, I mean, your organization or other institutions provide such trainings for youth in Turkey or in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, this is quite essential skill actually for both individuals, but also organizations, and it is not always the first thing that comes to mind, especially from an activist perspective. Activists usually focus on their issue, and like fundraising is a secondary issue that usually you have to think about, because you want, in order to reach out to your issue, you need to get some money or resource, whatever it is available. But of course, due to these technicalities, there are methodologies that are applied by donors, by these organizations who are in charge of them. And the most common methodological tool that we make use of is actually the logical framework and project cycle management methodology that are known. But I would say like the need usually rises for bigger programs to make use of these methodologies. Like we have talked about accession assistance programs and so on. If the grant size is big and so on, then of course you need to invest in these skills and you need to learn about them. And of course, organizations like us, we do a lot of capacity building in this field. There are too many resources around the field for this kind of capacity building. On the other side, along with these capacity building efforts, there is also an effort of facilitation. It doesn't only mean that, you know, by sub-granting or providing assistance to individuals, you do facilitate things. If you ask the same requirements to the individuals, then you would not be really facilitating everything. Therefore, actually, the application methodologies are also facilitated. For instance, this is what we did with Sivil Düşün. We have an application form, an application system, which is really very, very simplified now. And the process is also like very straightforward. Like we have an average evaluation of 1 month. So it's once you have an issue, then it's like going through the evaluation very quickly, and the result is quite quickly delivered at the same time. But still, we see that there is a need to learn how to really implement a project, how to really manage a project, how to plan a project. And in order to complement these efforts, I think more or less every organization providing assistance do that. We also developed capacity building trainings and tools. Again, it's kind of looking into a funding opportunity. There are a lot of trainings that are available already as an online self-paced learning system, methodology, and so on. But there are a lot of workshops that are organized by each donors that I have already mentioned in terms of availability of funding a few minutes ago. I can already tell from our perspective that, for instance, in Sivil Düşün, we do launch actually this fall an online learning portal where we will actually have this kind of trainings, again, in a self-paced manner, but also in other ways. STGM has a resource lab as a resource information center where you have also trainings organized a lot, but where you have also online trainings that are uploaded. So they are always accessible. And with a specific field focus, you can also find in other program areas this kind of fundraising and project cycle management methodology trainings. I think this is quite an important skill. This is why actually at CIFE as well, we have integrated that as a obligatory module in our training programs, in our master programs at the same time. So if you really want to work in this area in the future at the same time, that should be part of a complementary learning.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Emre. Moving from Emre and his amazing and attractive summer house by the seaside, let's move on to my good friend Medeni. Medeni, I would like to add your perspective and your thoughts on our discussion. And, you know, I had the pleasure, together with my colleagues, to have you involved in several of our training programs, either as a trainee or as a speaker since 2018, so time flies. So I consider you a civil society entrepreneur, if I may use this term. I would like to ask you to share your experience through trainings and network trips that you had so far and you participated in events and collaborations. And I would like you to give us a flavor of how you managed to secure funding for your projects and your organizations.
Thank you, Andras. First of all, always a pleasure being a part of ENC podcast. I wish I was at the summer house at the seaside with such a fancy look as Emre, but unfortunately, as you see, I'm in here in this, studio, circumferred with, all the black insulation material. So some of us are lucky. I want to go a little bit before the earlier part of this journey, as Emre described it, which is the beginning part, the earlier part, the formulation of intent part, because a lot of the organizations, a lot of the civil society groups, activists start with very good intents, but most often I find them not very well crafted or very, very much fine-tuned. A lot of people are operating on the basis of goodwill. Good intentions are a good starting point, but they don't cut it when the things start to get advanced. So the first thing when I talk to other civil society activists who are trying to get their organizations initiatives off the ground is to have a very sincere and honest look at what they are trying to achieve, what kind of problem they are trying to solve. And I sort of both advising them and directing them to certain methodologies that we don't use in civil society, or we are just adhering to, we are just meeting with, like design thinking, because we often, one of the major problems of the activists today, the activism culture, the civil society, is that we are very much focused on our own perspectives, our own ways of formulating the problem. So it's very, very, very important from the beginning to not settle with the answers you come up with and go directly talk to the primary either beneficiary or someone who's affected from the problem, to talk to them, to understand, to go have a deep look at the problem and craft your intentions, craft your solution at the edges. This is the first thing. Second thing I would say would be about prototyping. A lot of organizations, I see in my experience, a lot of groups are starting to think about money and organization and creating, foundations, associations from a very early point on. This is where a lot of EU cooperation can come in handy. And this is where a lot of organizations and groups can find very meaningful in terms of either starting their civil society journey at a larger scale, or actually nailing the right problems, because a lot of organizations probably are working already in different countries, in different contexts. Especially, for example, I'm coming from a media field. We have a lot of problems with regards to freedom of expression in Turkey, freedom of media in Turkey, and so is Balkans, so is East Europe right now. So are a lot of countries in Central Europe. I personally know through my civil society journey, a lot of organizations working on similar issues, and probably a lot of civil society initiatives that I've undertaken in the past and some way got inspired by their journey, by what they did. So I'm really a big believer of replicating the best practices, especially in the civil society field. And it's very important to either talk to them or trying to come up with a prototype of your solution before thinking about scaling up, before thinking about launching your association, launching your foundation, or launching a more formal group, which is a technical craft. This is something can be learned, but this is something most often regarded as a nuisance by the people who are trying to do good. So the intentions, generally, the good that's going to come out, of course, understandably, is the main driver of what they do. But there's a technical side that you need to, get your good intentions into. There's the carcass, the building, the foundation of the building, that you need to match the two. So this is the second thing I would say: prototyping, maybe launching a smaller scale version of your solution, what you want to do with the target group before you take any larger step. Secondly, third, while if you're at that stage, if you are launching an application, if you're listing, donor organizations, I will give a couple of examples where you can actually look up to for that in Turkey. If you are going that going into that third step, you need to again think very thoroughly about your proposed solution, about the problem, both about the problem first and about your solution. And this time you need to map out what kind of donors are there and what are the interests, what stakes of donor organizations have in that particular field. And you need to identify the matching points. You cannot just, you cannot just be focused on what you want to do. It needs to somehow correspond to what the donor organization, the kind of good donor organizations are seeking to achieve. It is very important. So the part about applications, there are, as Emre said, it's a technical skill to fill those documents, but it can be easily learned. Most often, this is a personal struggle as well. This has been a personal struggle as well throughout my civil society journey. There are restrictions for understandable reasons in most of the grant schemes. There are overhead restrictions, especially newly starting organizations are generally have a problem with. They need the overhead budgets, they need personnel budgets to start and scale, but most grant schemes, most project schemes are towards particular projects, and they have caps about overheads. So this is a general ongoing problem with regards to civil society organizations, so especially the newly starting ones. That's why you need to perhaps narrow down your search to organizations that are more flexible with their approaches. But to be able to, again, this flexibility doesn't mean you will be able to get it. This time, you need to be able to prove that you are the right person. This is the right problem. Second, this is the right solution. And third, you and your team are the right people to provide that solution. That's the magic trio you need to get online. If you get this right, then the writing of the proposal, the application, I've seen a lot of cases in my experience that even if you have a good solution at hand, if you have this magic trio at place, a lot of grant making organizations are reaching out to you, even if you have even if you have incorrectly filled the application form, and they help you with it, because that's I'm not sure if it's a blessing. It's a good thing than a bad thing. But the money is plenty for a while now in the world, especially in the post-2008 world. There is money. The grants are available, funds are available. A lot of organizations, not only in the civil society sector, but in the financial sectors in general, there's so much more money available, especially in the starting level, in the startup sectors, in the entrepreneurial sectors as well. But the good projects are rare. The projects that nail the problem, that nail the right solution, that come up with an original innovative solution is rare. So I really advise to take the time, have a thorough thinking about the problem formulation process. This is really the core of the problem that I'm dealing with. This is really the problem, or this is really where the problem is coming from that I'm trying to solve. And secondly, don't fall in love with your solution. It's your idea will change probably multiple times on the way about the solution. Maybe you can end up with a completely different solution at the end. So be very sincere, be very conscious, and be in a very conscious talk with yourself and your team about this is what we call the theory of change. You have to be very mindful of the theory of change, and that's not costly. I mean, you're at the starting point. The only thing you will do is to go to the interlocutor of the problem and talk to them, and the people who actually try to solve a similar problem. If you don't have it in your own context, you can find it. You will probably find it somewhere in the Balkans, Eastern Europe, Central Europe, or in the South, in the Middle East. And it's a lot easier than before. It's just a piece of cake to reach out to people, and if you ask, people are ready to help. People are ready to spare their 2 hours to talk about their own experiences, even if they don't know you. So it's important to go to the people who walk the path before you. Are you going to ask something?
Yes.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
If I may, sounds like Medeni, basically you have to know the right people and you have to have the right questions actually to ask. So, and all this advice towards the end sound like, I mean, maybe it's the same process to a certain extent about like PhD preparation, where your initial idea might change several times along the way until you reach, the final form that you want to, use, and this will become your research or your project if we're talking about projects. Thanks a lot, Medeni.
Most often the first solution or the first idea comes to our minds are not the best ones. So we need to give other shots on our solution proposals.
Yeah, actually, I was also going to ask a kind of similar thing, Medeni, because it seems like you are like telling your own story to us. This is really valuable, that these lessons that you learned from your own experience, and then now you're transferring all these things to a new social entrepreneurs. I guess this is really valuable for our audience as well. Emre, you had some question, I guess, before I go to the next one.
Yeah, just in here, actually, like, I think from a donor perspective, it is good to complement that. Like, as people are having an idea, donors also have an idea. Like, they want to reach out to a target, and not necessarily your best idea, your very good idea really matches with that. Of course, you can find like overlaps and so on, but still, you should really consider the feedbacks that you receive. Actually very well read what is written in their context, the past projects that have been passing on and so on. They all are very necessary. And, it's always good to walk with the other person's shoes. Like, it is necessary in that sense. This kind of thinking in terms of usually seeing the other perspective works best with looking at if there is an evaluation criteria, like of the projects, of the submissions and so on, because this evaluation criteria is something that is really well reflecting what we are looking at.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say the same thing, especially in the starting phase. A lot of organizations, civil society people, look at the donors as their bosses, or having some kind of leverage over them because of the financial relationship. The donor organizations actually most of the time are there for a reason, and they want to make those grants. There's a reason they're called grant making organizations. So they are there to help you. They are there to partner with you on the way. So for example, I strongly suggest a lot of organizations to reach out beforehand, to talk to them, to take the time to talk to, for example, in this case, Emre, for example, we have some time. We have a project like this. This is the problem we formulated. This is the solution we formulated. We are planning on applying to your fund. That's how you saved your time. That's how you save the time for the donor organization. That's how you match it. I mean, just thinking about the best way your solution matches with the donor's intents. There's a better way. I mean, you can just go out and talk to them, reach out and talk to them. They are open both in the beginning and along the way. You can just talk to them while formulating your project. You are providing as much value if you are carrying out a well-intentioned and well-executed, well-crafted civil society initiative. You're helping them as much.
Thank you, Medeni. I know you for 8 years right now, and I would describe you as a good researcher and a good networker. So I want to hear briefly, like 1 or 2 good examples from your own experience that you reached to the target group and you reached to the correct funding. So can you give us some brief examples about that?
What I'm trying to, I mean, briefly formulated, what I'm trying to achieve right now is to make the news more beautiful and smarter, to be able to reach out to younger generations. There's a general disinterest towards, both because of the format we consume, that a lot of punditry and talking heads. Right now dominating the public debate in Turkey. So we went out and trying a lot of different stuff, trying to incorporate storytelling, drama, other new methods with journalistic truth delivery. This is what we do. So we tried in the beginning. We isolated the donor groups. We are a non-profit organization. We are a social enterprise, but I mean, essentially, we are not a profit-seeking organization. Whatever revenue we have, we always invested in our social impact. The first thing is that we isolated areas where we can, because we thoroughly thought about the process, the kind of product we want to produce, and the kind of meta problem we want to tackle. From the beginning, we knew what we wanted to do. Then this gives you an advantage in terms of finding, in terms of eliminating the donors you wouldn't want to approach. Because if you have more money, I mean, this is also a problem of a lot of newly starting entrepreneurs as well. If you have more money than needed, if you have more donors than needed, that's another problem. Then you have to, spare more time in terms of managing those funds, in terms of reporting, et cetera, et cetera. It's equally burdensome. So it's important to keep in mind. We have isolated 2 groups actually. One is this is a practical contribution to the freedom of media, freedom of press, freedom of information in Turkey. We isolated organizations that are seeking to advance the freedom of press, freedom of media in different ways, preferably in innovative ways. And secondly, we isolated organizations that are more interested in with innovative journalism, those who are trying to innovate in journalism. This can be about storytelling, this can be about new formats, this can be about whatever. So I isolated those. We narrowed down the list of organizations that would be interested, and we have been able to have a very good head start. We've been blessed with great partners, actually, not donors. I'm not saying donors, because this is also a highlight of my experience. All of the donor organizations that I've been working with throughout my life in different organizations, they've always been friends. I've always seen them, and I think they've always seen me as a partner. I've been honest. When I did a mistake, I reported immediately, etc., etc. So this gives you an edge, or whenever I'm visiting, for example, whenever I'm visiting a city that for example, former donor organization is based in, I always take time to, stop by and say hi, because the people there are my friends, not just like an organization that, that we worked with for some time. So cultivating those long-term relationships, being open, as you would be open with your investor, as you would be open with your, partner, that helps you forge longer-term trust-based relationships, and at some point the money becomes no problem. You understand that it's more important to be able to formulate those well-crafted strategic plans, solutions to problems. If you have an eye to identify what's going wrong at the core of the problem, that everybody needs that. Excellent. I'm not sure if this suffices. I can give other examples, but I don't want to just
no. That's great. Actually, I think that both myself and my co-host Gülçin, I think we both see you as a good partner, a good friend, and a colleague with whom we have been collaborating several years, and there is a level of trust, so which is not something that is given, and you cultivate it, and it takes time for sure.
Thank you. Maybe if you,
the same goes for Emre as well. So it's how we cooperate. It's not something that started like out of the blue. We networked, we tested these relationships, and these partnerships, and we progress, and we continue working with each other.
Can I have a quick practical recommendations list?
Very quick then.
So very quickly, there are 3 layers of organizations that I recommend in Turkey. The first one is the German foundations, not because one of them is hosting this podcast. I mean, I'm telling this as a primary go-to group in Turkey. They have different interests. Some of them are working on the climate issues. Some of them are working more social issues. Some of them are working with more entrepreneurial stuff, business related stuff. They are always open. You can always go to them and talk to them. They have a very flexible approach. They don't do any money transfers. They only do in-kind contributions, but they have experienced teams, and they can help you formulate better whatever you're trying to achieve. They can add you to their networks that can connect you with others who are working either on the same field or similar fields. That's a very important starting point. So it's easy to network with them. Secondly, there are very importantly embassies and consulates in Turkey. They regularly open project proposal calls, civil society grants. That's also, some of them also are able to provide grants basically for organizations that are not registered, and organizations like European Endowment for Democracy, who are working in Brussels but have a distinct Turkey focus. There are other organizations as well. I will give you a few links right now: the foundationgrants.org, the grantwatch.com, I know these are important to our audience. There are pages like civilalan.com or projelervefonlar.com. These are websites that are listing the potential donor organizations, etc. These are always places you can go to.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll make sure to disseminate these links that you will share with us, Medeni. At this point, I would like to take the opportunity to thank both of you, Emre and Medeni, for virtually at least being available with us one more time. And of course, my excellent co-host in Istanbul, Gülçin, for helping me in moderating this excellent podcast discussion. It was a pleasure to see you all today. So for our audience, I would like to mention that the next podcast is focused on topics and jobs of the future. So please stay tuned. That was the ENC In-Depth podcast with Gülçin, Sinav, and Andreas Marazis.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.